The desert was a cruel place to bury love. Heat shimmered above the sand, bending the horizon like glass over fire. Jesse Callahan knelt in the dust beside the wagon, his hand trembling as it hovered over Mara's pale cheek. Her breaths were faint, fluttering like the wings of a bird caught in a snare. Her lips moved barely. He leaned closer. "Don't die with me, Jesse." Then she was gone. For a moment, the world was nothing but wind and emptiness. Jesse pressed his forehead to hers, her skin already cooling. The buzz of flies, the groan of the wagon wheel, the endless stretch of nothing, those were the only witnesses. He didn't cry. The tears had been wrung out of him 3 days ago, when the water ran dry and Mara's leg began to swell from the snake bite. By sundown, he buried her under a patch of mesquite and stones. He carved her name into a piece of scrap wood and wedged it into the soil with the same hand that once held her waist beneath a cottonwood tree. She'd loved trees, said the sound of their leaves made her feel safe. Out here, the only sound was silence. Jesse mounted his horse and rode home, carrying nothing but a near-empty canteen and the ghost of a woman who used to laugh louder than the prairie wind. 2 weeks passed. The ranch had gone to hell without her. The hens stopped laying, one of the cows died foaming at the mouth, and the porch roof groaned like it wanted to collapse just to finish the job grief had started. Jesse slept in a chair most nights, boots on, revolver within reach. The bed still smelled like Mara, lavender and sweat. He'd once been something of a legend, back when guns settled debts faster than lawyers and whiskey was cheaper than water. Folks used to whisper his name in saloons, Jesse Callahan, the ghost-eye gun hand, the man who shot 6 wrestlers outside cold water in broad daylight, and never got a scratch. That man was long dead. Mara had made sure of it. She saw the man under the dust and blood and gave him a reason to put the gun away. Now she was gone, and the ghosts were coming back. The preacher stopped by with a pie and a pointed look. "Grief don't cook meals, son. You need someone. A woman. A partner. God didn't mean for a man to weather the prairie alone." Jesse didn't answer. He stared at the pie until the preacher left. The ranch hands were next. "We need someone to help run things, boss," said Cal, the foreman, with hands like rope. "You either hire a cook and a keeper, or we walk. Ain't fair what you're asking of us." Jesse wanted to scream. Instead, he nodded. He had buried his heart, and now the world demanded he replace it. 3 days later, he rode into town. Elorn was the kind of place where the wind smelled like sweat and gun oil. The train station sat at the edge of town like a wound stitched into the earth. It was a hot afternoon when he heard the commotion. A crowd had gathered around a woman sitting on a trunk, her back straight despite the insults floating like dust in the air. "She looks older than the catalog said. Bet she cooked her last biscuit in 1895. Poor fool must have sobered up before the wedding." Laughter cut through the station yard like knives. Jesse squinted at her. She wore a plain blue dress, high-necked and button-tight, like she was holding herself together by sheer cloth and pride. Her dark hair was pinned up beneath a travel-stained hat, and her face, yes, older than expected, wore no paint or powder, but her eyes were clear, dark, and burning. She didn't cry, didn't plead, just sat with her back straight, boots planted like she was waiting for the world to remember it owed her something. What's her story? Jessie muttered to the station clerk. Mail order bride. Groom ran off after seeing her step off the train. Said she lied about her age. The woman turned then, catching Jessie watching her. There was no shame in her look, just defiance and a flicker of challenge, like she was daring him to laugh. He didn't. Instead, he walked over. You got a place to go? He asked. She studied him, the sun caught the silver in his hair, the lines around his eyes. Do you? He glanced at the gawking crowd. You want to keep being a show, or ride out with me? Do I get a name first? She asked. Jessie Callahan. Clara. 37. No kids, no man. Just a sharp tongue and a good memory. Married? Not anymore. Jessie nodded once. I just lost my wife. But I've got a ranch, too much work, and too many people telling me I need someone to keep me from dying in a chair. Her lips twitched. You sure know how to sweep a woman off her feet. He offered his hand. I'm not asking for love. She looked at it like it might bite her. Then she stood, took his hand, and said, Good. Because I'm too tired to pretend I'm someone else anymore. They rode out together that evening. She didn't ask about Mara, and he didn't ask about the trunk she guarded like it contained gold and gunpowder. The ride was quiet except for the creak of saddle leather and the occasional call of a hawk overhead. The land stretched endless before them, golden, rough, alive with secrets. When the ranch came into view, Clara tilted her head. This it? This is home. She nodded, and for a flicker of a second, something soft passed over her face. Then it was gone. As they crossed the gate, Jessie looked up at the porch where Mara used to sit with her book and lemonade. For a moment, guilt twisted in his gut like a knife. Beside him, Clara dismounted, dusted her skirt, and squinted at the house. Roof sagging. You got termites or just bad luck? He almost smiled. The ranch hands froze when they saw her. One spat tobacco and muttered, Already. Damn. Clara walked past them like they were weeds. Inside, the house smelled like dust and memory. She set her trunk down, looked around, and said, Where's the kitchen? He pointed. She walked in, opened a cabinet, and snorted. This place needs a woman or an exorcist. Essie stood in the doorway, unsure if he should apologize or defend himself. She didn't give him the chance. Look, Clara said, turning to him. We're strangers. You're broken, I'm bruised, and neither of us signed up for fairy tales. But I'll pull my weight, keep my name clean, and won't ask for anything you ain't willing to give. Deal? He stared at her, then nodded. Deal. She offered her hand again. This time he took it without hesitation. As their hands met, thunder rolled somewhere far off in the mountains, low and distant, like the west itself had taken a breath. In that moment, Jessie didn't know what he had just invited into his life. He only knew the quiet was finally broken, and maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't die in that chair after all. The ghost stirred, the wind shifted, and the story had only just begun. The morning after Clara arrived, Jessie found her in the barn, sleeves rolled up, mucking out stalls with a pitchfork like she'd been doing it all her life. Her dress was hitched at the knees, boots caked with mud, and a wisp of hair had come loose to curl against her temple. She didn't look up when he entered. "Thought I'd wait for an invitation, but these horses stink worse than the saloon on poker night," she said. Jessie leaned against the post, arms crossed, watching. "You don't have to do that." Clara stabbed the pitchfork into a heap of straw. "I married into this mess, didn't I?" He didn't have a reply for that. Truth was, he still wasn't sure why he'd offered. Maybe it had been pity. Maybe defiance. Maybe a desire to prove to the world, or to himself, that he could still make a decision that wasn't soaked in grief. But now, with Clara here, breathing life into the hollow spaces Mara left behind, it all felt more complicated than he'd planned for. By noon, she'd reorganized the pantry, patched a hole in the chicken coop, and yelled at one of the ranch hands for letting a calf wander too far. Jessie watched her like a man watches a fire he doesn't know whether to warm his hands by or back away from. She was loud, sharp, and had no patience for nonsense. The men didn't know what to make of her. "She yours?" Cal asked, scratching his beard, eyes narrowing. "She's here," Jessie answered. That night, Clara cooked stew with a heavy hand and strong spices. The ranch hands grumbled, but ate every bite. She sat across from Jessie, her expression unreadable in the flickering lamplight. "Is there a room that ain't haunted?" she asked, spoon poised midair. He hesitated. "You can take the spare by the porch." "Appreciate it. And don't worry, I won't touch anything in the bedroom." "That's yours." Their eyes met. The silence thickened, not awkward, but heavy with things unsaid. "I wasn't trying to replace her," Clara said softly. "I was just trying to survive the train ride." "I know," he replied, but he wasn't sure if he did. Over the next few days, they settled into an uneasy rhythm. She woke before dawn, kept the kitchen warm, and made her presence known with the snap of her words and the clatter of pans. Jessie rose with the sun, checked the fence lines, and tried to ignore the way Clara's voice echoed differently in the house than Mara's ever had, brighter, sharper, less careful. Sometimes at night, he'd find himself listening for Mara's footsteps, only to hear Clara humming an old hymn as she folded linens or mended clothes. The song twisted something in him, reminding him how long it had been since there'd been a woman's voice under his roof. Clara didn't ask questions. Not about Mara, not about Jessie's past, not about the portrait still hanging in the parlor. She moved around the house with a kind of reluctant respect, as if living in another woman's shadow was just part of the job. But Jessie wasn't the only one watching. One afternoon, he caught her out by the barn with a folded letter in her hands. Her brow was furrowed, mouth tight. When she saw him, she tucked the letter back into her boot with a speed that made his stomach twist. "You all right?" he asked. Clara wiped her hands on her apron. "Just old business." "Business going to come looking for you?" She looked him dead in the eye. "It usually does." Jessie didn't press. He knew the look of a person guarding something too old or too ugly to share. He saw it in the mirror every morning. Still, the seed of suspicion took root. Things came to a head the following week. The sun was dipping low, turning the hills copper, when a rider appeared on the horizon. He wore a black duster, hat pulled low, his horse kicking up dust like a storm coming in. Clara stood on the porch, arms folded, eyes locked on him before Jesse even noticed. The rider stopped at the gate. "Evening," he called, voice smooth as whiskey and just as dangerous. Jesse stepped forward, hand resting casually on his hip. "You looking for something?" The man smiled. "Name's Samuel. Heard a friend of mine might have passed through these parts." Clara stepped down from the porch, slow and steady. Her voice was quiet but firm. "You're not welcome here." Samuel's eyes lit up with recognition and something darker. "There she is. Didn't think you'd settle down, Clara. Thought you'd keep running till the vultures caught up." "Don't," she warned. Jesse felt tension crackle between them like kindling near a flame. "You know him?" Clara didn't answer. Samuel leaned forward in his saddle. "You tell your husband here who you used to be. Or did you change your name again?" "I told him enough," Clara said, voice like steel. Jesse's fingers flexed. "You have business here, you say it. Otherwise, ride on." Samuel looked from Clara to Jesse and back. "You really going to pretend, Clara? Like we didn't burn half of Wichita for less than this?" Clara's jaw tightened. "That was a lifetime ago." Samuel grinned. "Sure doesn't feel like it." Jesse stepped forward. "Last warning." Samuel held up his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, Ghost. I ain't here to fight. Just wanted to see if the rumors were true." "Guess they are." He turned his horse, but his parting words floated back like a rattler's hiss. "You always were good at pretending." When he disappeared down the trail, Jesse turned to Clara. "Who is he?" he asked. Clara's face was pale, eyes hollow. "No one I ever wanted to see again." "You rode with him?" She nodded slowly. "Once. Before I knew better." Jesse exhaled through his nose. "There's something I should know." Clara hesitated, then looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't come here clean. I came here to start over." "But Samuel, he doesn't let people walk away." He studied her, measured the tremor she tried to hide. "You running from him?" "I'm not running anymore," she said. "I'm tired of running." That night, neither of them slept much. Jesse sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, staring into the dark. Clara didn't hum. She paced behind closed doors, her footsteps a slow and steady drumbeat of old fear returning. The next morning, she was back in the barn, hammering a new latch on the stall door. Jesse approached, weary from a sleepless night. "He'll be back," he said. "I know. We'll handle it." Clara paused, looked at him. "You sure about that?" He nodded once. "I didn't ask for trouble, but now it's here. I won't turn from it." She gave him a faint smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're a damn fool, Jesse Callahan. I married a stranger at a train station." "Fool's just the beginning." A breeze rolled through the barn, carrying the scent of dust and something distant, rain, maybe, or smoke. Jesse didn't know what was coming, only that it had teeth. And Clara, whatever she'd run from, had brought it straight to his door. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel empty. He felt alive. And he had no intention of losing anyone else. Not again. Not without a fight. The morning Samuel returned, the wind carried a strange hush, like the land itself was holding its breath. Crows circled low over the ridge. The horses in the corral were restless, stamping and snorting, their unease vibrating through the dust. Jesse knew. He saddled his gelding before dawn, checked the chamber of his colt with steady hands, and watched the trail from the ridge. The clouds were low and mean, casting bruised shadows over the dry earth. His knuckles tightened around the reins as he spotted riders emerging from the east, 5 of them, dark as thunderclouds and twice as fast. Down at the house, Clara stood in the doorway, rifle slung across her back, jaw set like stone. She didn't speak. Neither did he. They'd said everything that needed saying the night before, seated at the table Mara once polished with rose oil and prayer. "I'll stand with you," she'd said, voice trembling but eyes fierce. "I won't run. Not this time." Jesse had nodded. That vow, quiet and raw, meant more than gold or God. And now it was time to live by it. The riders approached slow, the kind of slow that screams confidence, or the promise of blood. Samuel rode in the center, coat flapping, a silver revolver gleaming at his hip like a serpent's fang. His eyes found Clara immediately. "You always had bad taste in husbands," he called, grinning. Jesse dismounted, stepped forward. "State your business." Samuel's smile widened. "She took something from me." "I ain't a thing," Clara snapped. "And if you treated me like a human being back then, maybe I'd have stayed." He laughed, the sound dry and cruel. "Stayed? You think you left me? I let you go, Clara. And now I'm calling you back." Jesse stepped between them. "She stays. You leave." The 4 men flanking Samuel shifted in their saddles. Tension crackled in the air, heavy and sharp like gun oil before the spark. "You really want to die for her?" Samuel asked. Jesse's voice didn't waver. "If I do, I won't be alone." They moved at once. The first shot rang out before Jesse's boots hit the dirt. His revolver barked twice. One rider tumbled from his horse, another ducked behind a hitching post. Clara's rifle cracked from the porch, splinters exploding from a wagon wheel where Samuel had tried to take cover. Dust rose like smoke. Bullets whined through the air, thunking into wood, stone, flesh. Jesse rolled behind a trough, reloaded by feel, and shouted, "Clara." Still breathing, she yelled back, voice hard as granite. The man behind the hitching post charged, revolver drawn. Jesse caught him square in the chest. The gunman staggered, coughed once, and dropped. Samuel rose, eyes wild. "You think this ends with a few dead men?" Jesse took aim. "I think it ends with the last man standing." He fired. Samuel jerked back, shoulder exploding red, but he didn't fall. He snarled, returned fire, missed by inches. Clara took a second shot, grazing his horse, sending the animal rearing. Samuel hit the ground hard, rolled, and disappeared behind the water tank. Then, silence. Smoke curled from the barn door. 2 bodies lay in the dust. A third groaned nearby, clutching a shattered leg. Jesse moved through the haze, scanning, breathing in short, sharp gulps. His arm burned, grazed, maybe fractured, but he pushed forward, searching for Samuel. He found him crouched by the well, blood soaking his sleeve, eyes wild with hate. "You're just a tired old cowboy," Samuel spat. "You think you won something here?" "I want her piece," Jesse said. Samuel lunged. They collided in the dust, fists flying. Jesse's vision blurred from a blow to his jaw, but he drove his elbow into Samuel's ribs, wrestled him down, and slammed the man's gun hand into the ground until bone cracked. Samuel screamed. "You should have stayed gone," Jesse growled. "I always finish what I start," Samuel gasped. "So do I." Clara appeared beside them, rifle aimed, eyes steady. "And at Jesse." Jesse stood, chest heaving. He looked down at Samuel, broken and cursing in the dirt, and for one heartbeat, he saw himself, not now, but years ago, before Mara, when revenge and rage were the only languages he spoke. He holstered his gun. "Get off my land," he said. "And if I ever see your shadow cross that gate again, you won't walk away." Samuel stared at him in disbelief, then spat blood. But he didn't argue. He limped to a surviving horse, dragged himself into the saddle, and rode off into the dying light, trailing dust and disgrace. Clara watched until he disappeared over the ridge, then she sank to her knees. Jesse moved to her side, gently pried the rifle from her grip. Her hands were shaking, her breath uneven. "I thought you were going to kill him," she whispered. "I wanted to. But you didn't." He met her gaze. "That's what makes me different from who I used to be." She touched his cheek, thumb brushing dirt and blood. "And why I stayed." The ranch was quiet that night, too quiet. Jesse and Clara sat together on the porch, a blanket draped across both their shoulders, the stars above as sharp and clear as shards of old glass. "I never told you what I did," she said finally, voice barely above the wind. "You don't have to." "I want to." He waited. "I rode with him when I was 17, she began. "Thought he was charm wrapped in danger. Turned out he was poison with a smile. We robbed, we burned, we hurt people who didn't deserve it. I thought if I followed orders, I'd stay safe. I was wrong." Jesse didn't interrupt. "I ran after he shot a farmer who had a kid hiding under the bed," she said, voice cracking. "I swore I'd never carry a gun again. But the West doesn't let you leave without scars." He took her hand. "No one gets out clean. But we get to choose what comes next." Clara looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time, he saw her walls come down. Not all the way, but enough to glimpse the woman beneath, wounded, worn, but still standing. "I didn't think anyone would take me seriously," she said. "Too old, too rough, too used up." Jesse chuckled, low and warm. "You're more alive than half this town. And as for age, I reckon a woman's value ain't in the years she's got, but the grit she carries through them." She smiled, tired but genuine. The wind shifted again, softer this time, carrying the scent of rain and mesquite. The porch creaked as Jesse leaned back. "I didn't marry you for love," he said, almost to himself. Clara's voice was gentle. "I didn't expect you to. But I think," he added, "I might have found something just as strong." She didn't reply. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder. The ranch, battered but still standing, stretched around them. Life hadn't gotten easier, but it had found new shape in the ruins. And something told Jesse the worst wasn't over. But he was ready now. Not to fight again, but to live. With someone who wouldn't flinch when the shadows grew long. And maybe, just maybe, to let love come in its own wild, dust-covered way. The summer waned, and with it, the sharp edges of the past began to dull, though they never vanished entirely. The land healed in its own time, grass growing back where blood had soaked the dirt, fence posts straightened where gunfire had splintered wood. The smell of cordite was long replaced by hay and horse sweat. But Jesse knew scars didn't just lie beneath the skin. They lived in the silence between words, in the half-glances across a breakfast table, in the dreams that yanked you awake long before sunrise. Clara stayed. She rebuilt the barn roof with her own hands, taught Jesse's mare to come to a whistle, and once punched a ranch hand square in the jaw for making a joke she didn't like. Jesse didn't ask what the joke was, the man never made another. And somewhere between her morning coffee and her nightly hymn, she carved a space into Jesse's life that he hadn't realized was still open. He found her one evening in the garden, sleeves rolled up, palms stained with soil as she coaxed stubborn sprouts out of the earth. Her hair was tied back with one of Mara's old ribbons, something he should have noticed, should have minded, but all he felt was peace when he saw it. "You think they'll grow?" he asked, nodding to the sad green things poking from the dirt. Clara wiped her brow. "Ain't about whether they grow. It's about whether I am willing to keep coming back to try." Jesse stood silent a moment, then crouched beside her. "You've changed things." Clara shrugged. "Things needed changing." "No," he said softly. "I mean me." She looked at him then, her eyes steady and unsure at the same time. "I didn't come here to fix you." "I know. But I think you started to anyway." Clara smiled, and for once, it reached her eyes. That night they danced. No music, no reason, just Jesse taking her hand in the kitchen and leading her around the table, slow and awkward and beautiful. Clara laughed, full-throated and real, and Jesse found himself smiling in a way that didn't hurt anymore. But the West has a way of reminding you that peace is a visitor, not a tenant. It came just after dusk with a horse's panicked whinny and a rider in a blood-soaked duster galloping into the yard. He barely made it off the saddle before collapsing, gasping for breath. Jesse reached him first. "Davis," he said, recognizing the rancher from 2 valleys over. "What happened?" Davis coughed, spat blood, and grabbed Jesse's shirt with shaking hands. "They are back. Samuel's not done." Clara stepped forward, face pale. "I thought he left." "He didn't," Davis wheezed. "He's got men now. Real ones. Hired guns. They've been raiding ranches west of here. He said, he'll burn yours last, make you watch." Jesse felt the world shift, slow and cold. Clara's hand found his arm. "We have time," she said. Davis died before he could say more. Jesse buried him by the fence line the next morning. Clara saddled her mare. "Where are you going?" Jesse asked, heart already dropping. "To warn the others. If he's coming, we're not the only target." "I'll go." Clara looked at him. "You've got a ranch to defend." "I've got nothing Samuel can take from me anymore." "Yes, he can." She blinked. "He can take you," Jesse said. For a long beat, neither spoke. Then she reached up, touched his cheek with a gentleness that broke something inside him. "I'll be back by nightfall," she said. "Just promise me you'll be ready." He nodded. Clara rode off like smoke on the wind, and Jesse gathered what men he could: 4 ranch hands, 2 older neighbors with hunting rifles, and Cal, who brought nothing but a bottle of whiskey and an axe. "We'll hold," Jesse told them. "We don't give an inch." They fortified the barn, set traps along the ridge, posted lookouts. The sun crawled overhead like a buzzard circling. By sundown, Clara hadn't returned. By nightfall, Jesse knew something had gone wrong. The first shot came just after midnight. A flare lit the southern field an orange flame, smoke rising like a phantom scream. Men shouted, horses reared, and gunfire cracked like thunder across the hills. Samuel's men hit fast, brutal, and coordinated. Jesse fired from the porch, dropped one, then ducked as a bullet shattered the window beside his head. The barn erupted in sparks. Someone had set it ablaze from the rear.